Well, welcome everybody. I appreciate y'all being here. We're here to talk about church engagement model. So I have to say the fact that you came to this class means that you're a very nerdy person. So it's a very nerdy topic to go over this kind of thing. I think of myself as a nerd. I'm a very systems-driven guy. So I'm the type of guy that thinks of church through the lens of system. That's why I got hired into my role. Tim, who's our senior pastor that I work with at Christ Greenfield, he's very much a culture architect. So we tend to think of each other, balancing each other out of culture and systems, right? So a quick definition of system, what do you think a system is? What would be a quick definition of a system? A system is anything you plan on doing 2 or more times, right? So you're going to do it more than twice, you might want to think about having a system. And we got people speaking on the intercom here.
The annex in an hour for ice cream passing out.
Okay, faculty, can you please, if you heard that, I would like all junior high kids
Okay.
I'll grab a single.
That'd be great. Thank you. I'll be talking over this guy. So as we get started, I have a little bit of a reflection verse here as we start thinking about engagement. For though I am free from all, I've made myself a servant to all, that I might win, was it from Corinthians? That I might win more of them. To the Jews I became a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not being outside of the law, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in this blessings. All right, what do you think, when you reflect on this verse, the specific sentence I've highlighted, I've become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. What is your reflection on that? Go ahead.
We have to change and be flexible, not to what we want, but what's needed.
Yeah?
It means sometimes justify the ends.
Sometimes the means justify the ends, right? What else?
It's relatability.
Relatability. How about the word relevance, right? So I need to be able to understand the person I'm talking to and be able to see things through their shoes, right? So he's shifted what the meaning of ministry is to kind of be, I'm looking through their lens now, and I'm trying to engage them through their lens. Anybody disagree with that kind of view of an interpretation here? So then how does the church reach people, right? So we would say through intentional engagement. And people are going to say, well, what is engagement, right? Engagement defined, engagement is interaction with people in exchange for value. So people are not going to interact with you unless you're giving them something that they believe is valuable, right? And there's a lot of things that define what is valuable to the person. Other synonyms for engagement would be commitment, participation, sharing, involvement, partaking, association, encounter, right? So just as we think about church engagement, realize that everything you're doing as you're moving people through an engagement process, you're interacting with them in exchange for some sort of value, and that person is defining that value as they're entering into a process with you. I'm putting this up here because some people get upset when we talk about this topic, right? When we hear us talk about that, you just want to be Joel Osteen, right? That's not what we want. We don't see this as a theological thing, right? We're not saving people by engagement. It's a practical means of building relationships with people. Engagement happens in secular and sacred places, right? You've got Disneyland. They're engaging with people. They have their version of engaging with people. They're having interaction in exchange for value. People pay to go to Disney World, right? And then we have down at the bottom here a church, packed to the brim, because of a Christmas pageant that's going on, right? Absolutely full, to each end of the pew. So something to keep in mind is that you've got secular and even pagan things that are engaging with people, and it's competing with the sacred, the spiritual that's trying to engage with people. They're actually competing, right? When you're inviting people to come to church on Sunday, that participation for a lot of people is competing with, I want to spend 3 hours on Xbox, right? So that person has to believe that coming to church is more valuable than spending 3 hours on Xbox. That's just the reality of the world we live in. As we unpack the church engagement model, I want to give credit to where we've learned this. So we've been in partnership with an organization called Glue. And some of the folks, the staff over at Glue, they wrote this book called 14 Fridays. And we were aware of the model even before they published the book. But if somebody wants to go into real depth on this is kind of a good resource that you can kind of go on your own and read more about this. But the key thing is that the church engagement model, it helps to clarify what we see as 5 jobs of the church. Every church does this to engage with people. They're either going to do this intentionally or they're going to do it unintentionally. When you're doing it unintentionally, it's called organic. When you're doing it intentionally, it's called a system, right? A system is what? Anything you do 2 or more times, right? Is better to have some type of a system, regardless of how rigid you follow it. When you do them with intention, as part of a planned system, right, you get better and more reliable results. That's just the reality of it. Now, can systems get too rigid? Yes, they can get too rigid. So that's something that you have to just keep balanced as you're thinking this through. Here's kind of like a visual of the church engagement model. We've actually drawn it as a circle. It's a tract, and when you're doing the job of a tract, you're engaging a person that says, I want to know more, get, I want to try it out, retain, I want to stay, grow, I want to grow, right? Multiply, I want to contribute. So the journey of engagement for a person starts as a consumer, right? Very superficial, maybe very transactional with a person sometimes. That's just the reality of it. But as the relationship deepens, that consumer relationship transforms to a contributor relationship. As trust is built, as a person grows in faith and matures, and connections deepen. And that is all happening around the Great Commission, right? So this is the benefit then. If you realize that these are the 5 jobs that every church is doing, you do it well or you do it poorly, but you're doing the job, you can start to create strategy behind that. So I know I've got 5 jobs. I can curate the best practices for each of those jobs. I can steward better. I can use the right jobs. We like to use the word, you can hire the right solution for that job, right? Every amount of money that you spend in the local church, you're hiring that resource to solve for something. If you hire a youth director, you're hiring that youth director to solve for youth discipleship. If you hire a janitor, you're hiring that janitor to maybe solve for a cleanliness experience that people have on Sunday. So everything you're doing, you're hiring to solve for some type of engagement that's happening in the church. So let's start to pack this. Any questions before we move on, though? So far, okay. Feel free, if you get any kind of burning question, just shout it out or raise your hand, and I'll pause for you. We're going to hit the first job of a tract, which is I want the thought theme. This is the motivation. I want to know more. What causes a person to want to know more about a ministry? So, kind of a good way to define this is a ministry that is winning at the job of a tract has created a situation where there is positive awareness. And positive awareness is that people know about you and they think positively about you. So you can know about them but not think positively. You can have a tiny number of people that think positively, but just tiny, so really nobody knows about you but the people they do think positive, right? So you can be on either one of those. You can win at one and not the other. So let's take a look at this. These are some brands here. Is everybody familiar with these brands? All right. Let me ask you a question real quick. What do these 3 brands all have in common? Stock.
They sell stuff.
They sell stuff. There's a T, yeah. What else? Red.
They're focused on customer service.
Customer service.
A loyal following.
They have a loyal following. Tell me more about that.
People that go to Trader Joe's love Trader Joe's.
They do.
And they talk to people about how much they love Trader Joe's.
Yes. So, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say the same Costco. That's the one, right?
Yes, go ahead.
They're willing to like sacrifice some things just to have access, or like I think at Trader Joe's you can't get everything you want at Trader Joe's. Like if you go to Trader Joe's, you need to stop at another grocery store likely.
Yes.
They don't have everything, but people still go there.
But the stuff that's there, people are like, this is amazing, right?
Or you drive extra time.
Yeah.
Because the nearest Trader Joe's.
I knew this conversation was going to go about Trader Joe's, by the way.
This is amazing.
Yeah,
Seven to
well, we stop at Costco first, go to Trader Joe's, and if neither of them have it, then we go to home.
While driving your Tesla? Yeah. So I'm going to answer the question. They spend almost nothing on external advertising. Almost nothing. But everybody here knows about them. So why do you think it is that you know about Trader Joe's even though they almost, as far as I know, they don't even have a Facebook page? There's fan Facebook pages, and there's like Facebook pages that people make to petition them to open a store there, but they don't even have their own Facebook page. They don't buy ads. How come everybody knows about Trader Joe's?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. So people know about them, and they think very positively about that. So keep that in mind, because we're going to be talking about brand. A lot of attract has to do with the word brand, right? So when we think about attract strategies, what I do, I like to kind of clump things together and create categories out of stuff. So for me, it's very helpful to think that the first kind of attract strategy has to do with your reputation or brand management. You are building a brand for your church. Your church has a brand, right? The question is, what is the brand? Is it a good one? Is it a type of brand that you want, or is it a bad brand? So some of the things that define your brand would be the compelling why. Is the why statement behind your church so compelling that it attracts the right people to it? Raving fans. We'll talk a little bit about Net Promoter Score. But I just heard a bunch of raving fans about Trader Joe's. Wouldn't you love it if people talked about your church the same way they talk about Trader Joe's, right? For lack of a better phrase, I use this word inbound awareness. But inbound awareness is about capturing people that are actually searching for what you provide. So you have a service, you have maybe a school or a marriage program or something like that, and people are searching for that. So are you capturing that and having it directed to you rather than it being directed somewhere else? So I call that kind of an inbound awareness strategy. And that's where things like search engine optimization and Google My Business and Google Grants. By the way, is everybody using Google Grants for their marketing? I'm just going to throw this nugget out there. Every church is a nonprofit, and every nonprofit is eligible to sign up with Google for $10,000 a month in free Google AdWords. So if you're not aware of that, that's minus my 10% commission that I get. So just take that. You may want to work with a consultant on that. Missional marketing is downstairs, and if you say, Jack wants me to talk to you about Google Grants, they'll appreciate it. They can help you out with that. But yeah, $10,000. And I will tell you what, if you're not using that program, I can guarantee that the big mega church down the street is using that program. So they're capturing all the inbound awareness, right? Because you're not doing it. Outbound awareness. This is a little bit different. This is pushing stuff out. So this is where you buy advertisements, purchasing a billboard, purchasing Facebook ads, right? So digital and physical ads, and then reaching people with creative content. A lot of churches now have developed creative ministries where they're able to do really great videos, great music, all that kind of stuff, great teaching about topics, and they're pushing it out with social media. And this is hitting people with their felt needs and their questions. We're going to talk a lot about felt needs, but felt needs is an important concept to know about in engagement. Again, we're trying to become all things for all people. That means understanding what their felt needs are. It doesn't mean always agreeing with somebody about something, but it is about understanding their felt needs and understanding where does the church have relational equity to speak into that. Talk a little bit about brand. Quote from Martin Luther King, "Stop boring people with your plans and inspire them with your vision." Martin Luther King. And then Simon Sinek, strongly recommend his book, Start With Why. He says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? One of the great examples he gave was Apple and Dell both made MP3 players. Like back in the day when MP3 was going through the roof, you could get one from Apple or you could buy one from Dell. Who here bought an MP3 player from Dell? I wouldn't even think about doing that, right? But it made sense to buy it from Apple because there was sort of a culture, a why, a philosophy behind how they designed their product, right? It made sense that you would buy it from Apple. It didn't make sense that you'd buy it from Dell. Brand is your reputation. It is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So if you're the pastor, the brand of your ministry is whatever your members and the people, your guests, whatever they say about your church, when you're not there, that's your brand. Okay? So think about that in relationship to your ministry. What do you think people are saying about your ministry when no leader is there to listen to it? Organizations with excellent brands have raving fans, like Trader Joe's, right? Who speak positively about them. Nailing your brand is the most important first step of your attract strategy. And I'm going to say this, do not spend money on advertising if you haven't worked on your brand first. This is by far the best return on investment that you can do to create an attractional church. I'm going to talk about a tool that we use a lot in our context. We learned about it through multiple interactions, Leadership Network, Glue, a bunch of different organizations out there. They talk about it in the 14 Fridays book. This tool called a Net Promoter Score. Has anybody heard of that before? You've heard about it? You want to explain it?
Years since I used it, but basically it's like a satisfaction survey, and the only scores that you really want are a 9 or a 10. Those are the only scores that mean that they're going to actually rave about you.
Yep.
I think it's based on one question.
One question.
Would you recommend us to your friend or family member?
Yep. So it's a customer, or in the case of a church, a member's willingness to recommend your service or ministry to another person. And it is the thing that actually is the primary cause and predictor of growth. So I don't have an in-depth training on it, but there, just make a note, Google Net Promoter Score, and there's all kinds of videos about it online. But basically they're asking a question on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our ministry or our school or youth program or whatever it is. We use it for all kinds of stuff, right? Anytime we start a new program, we put net promoters on it. So you're giving a voice to the person to let them tell you what is valuable and what is not valuable. Only the people that give 9s and 10s, research shows, are the ones that actually are promoters because they're generous in the number that they give. Anybody that gives a 6 or lower is a detractor. They actually have negative things that they're telling people. And then it is the 7s and the 8s, they're neutral. They could be swayed either way. So what they do in this particular case is, again, they actually recommend We use a tool, SurveyMonkey. So if you guys have SurveyMonkey, they actually have a template, a Net Promoter template in there that you can use. It's not hard to figure out. And it'll calculate, it says, what is the percentage of people that are promoters minus the people that are detractors? That's your net promoter score. And there's some basic benchmarks. What I would say is that they say anything that's above 0 is good. Anything that's above 25, I think, is considered great. And then like world class is getting like 70 plus is considered world class. And those are the things like Apple and Trader Joe's gets. So, you want to see that you have a ministry that's nailing a high net promoter score. And then what you do is they usually follow up with a very open-ended question about if they're a promoter, it kind of has some logic in there and it says, what caused you to give such a high score, right? And if they're not a promoter, it says, well, what would we have to do different for us to get a higher score? So they're asking 2 different questions to 2 different groups. It's letting you know what the value of your organization is from your promoters, so you can decide to amplify that and make them even more passionate about it. And you can also find out what is harming your brand. We were doing a survey at Christ Greenfield. We were doing a generosity messaging, and we were kind of like getting really big about 4 ways to give, because it's electronic, it's in person, all that. And some people, it was really angering them. That phrase was like glass in their ears, and it was showing up in our net promoter. So we had to say, don't say 4 ways to give. Don't do that. All it took is for us to not say that, for that detractor to stop, those detractors to stop doing that. In our school, we were able to improve our net promoter score by buying a couple vans, because people were frustrated about shuttling kids to sports events, right? So that's all it took, was to buy a couple vans, and it improved our net promoter score. It improved our brand by buying a couple vehicles.
How did you find out?
It was in the survey. People would say, what could we do to get a better score? They say, boy, it's really frustrating to get kids moved around for sporting events. Oh, So we reacted to that. So there's things that'll show up in a survey that you can't do anything about, Generally, I think you're doing a good job when you have an equal number of people saying that you're too liberal and you're too conservative. You realize, okay. But if it's like, hey, your lobby is filthy, well, we should react to that. That should motivate us to action. We don't want people saying bad things about us because we don't have good hospitality in the lobby, right? And that's a fixable thing. So there's a lot of things that are fixable, and a lot of things that you can't fix. Okay, go ahead.
Do you have multiple surveys for different areas that you're trying to investigate, or do you just have a general?
Yeah, so we actually do what's called a drip campaign. So for the congregation at large, we just survey the ministry of Christ Greenfield. How likely are you to recommend Christ Greenfield? And it's a drip survey in that we've divided the entire congregation up randomly into 24 cohorts. And twice a month, one of the cohorts gets polled so that we can see over the course of a year how that survey looks. And then when we do a new program, we're usually or an event, we're usually pretty intentional about doing some type of net promoter survey for that, so we can figure out how to improve on it. Or during the event, we'll try to do even a version of it, like when we do Harvest Fest, we'll put give us a rating, 1 out of 5 stars, and it's not exactly the same, but it's kind of telling us something similar. Yeah.
So when you're splitting up the cohorts, do they get the same questions? So you're just gauging that against you?
Yeah, so it just allows us to measure over time, what does Christmas season look like? What does Easter season look like? So, rather than just looking at the whole year.
How do you use it to manage the drip campaign?
So there's software that will do it for you that's expensive. We just kind of rigged it up manually and just in our software put people into different groups in our database. And then it ties to SurveyMonkey. And so our business manager, she just knows how to do that really well. And she says, okay, this group gets it. This group gets it. She just kind of does it on a schedule. By the way, Ryan Ermeling has some software. I'm trying to think of the name. I'm trying to remember the name of his software, but he has software designed specifically for schools to do this, and it's really good. But here's kind of another thing just to think about with net promoters. I'm going to linger on this a little bit. Is if somebody identifies as a promoter, a raving fan of your ministry, Then what you can do is you've recorded that no. I now know Sally Smith is a raving fan. So now I can follow up with an email and say, hey, we're so glad that you like our ministry. Would you rate us on Google and rate us on Facebook and rate us on Yelp? And leave a comment about that because people might want to hear your opinion. And I will say, we ask those people. We don't necessarily ask other people to do it. So we pick and choose the people that we ask to do that. Not that we prohibit anybody from doing it, but we now know that there's people that would maybe actually feel motivated to do this, right?
So it's not anonymous when they send this out?
We don't do it anonymous. Yeah. We prefer, every once in a while, a comment will come up on the survey that's a really good pastoring moment for us because of the comments on that. So it's not very common, but sometimes, oh, this really requires a phone call, you know. So sometimes there'd be somebody that you would think is a raving fan, and some really concerning comments come out, and you really need to connect with that person. So my recommendation is to not do it anonymous.
Pushback on that?
No, we don't pretend. We don't pretend that it's anonymous. We just say fill out the survey, you know. So we don't say fill out our anonymous survey. We don't say that, but you know. And we could, if somebody says, I want to fill it out anonymous, we have another sort of anonymous reporting process that's on there. If you have a grievance or something that you want to submit anonymously, here's a link. You know, we let people do that.
What's your response rate?
Pretty high. I want to say probably about a third. Yeah.
What do you do to encourage people to fill out the survey?
It's just an email that goes out, you know, and they don't realize that they're part of a group. They just get this email, and they either respond to it or they don't. You know, but what is really good is to periodically talk to the congregation about the surveys. Because when you talk to the congregation about the surveys, it lets them know that their feedback is actually valuable. It actually is not just going into a black hole somewhere. So you can say, hey, our community told us something about church vans, or you know, whatever. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. They actually read that, you know. And then the response rates will be higher. Go ahead.
Do you have your groups set up in any particular way? Like, I don't know, are there any demographics or psychographics for those? Or just
No, you know what it is we let them, we already know their demographics, but they also let them kind of fill out demographic stuff on their own to say, oh, I go to this worship service, and sometimes we'll parse that.
Because that's what I'm curious. We have very traditional, and then we have, you know.
We have looked at that where we felt like, what's going on? So if there's something that causes a yellow flag, we may dig deep into the demographics and see if there's, it's the 7:30 group or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
How about for your guest experience for Sunday morning? Do you somehow pull them?
No, because it seems, so if they come to an event, yes. If they come to a worship service, no, because it seems, for us, it just seems a little too invasive to do that for them at that point if they're brand new. Maybe I'm wrong, and I think there's some ministries that may take that approach, but I think it kind of has to, people are a little sensitive about what they want to share or not share the first time they come visit. Yeah.
Well, that was actually something that we wrestled with was there was that, and then the other part of it too is that there are people who come and they try it out and they find that it's just not what they want.
Yeah.
They're more likely to give a negative response because they invested their time.
Right.
And they didn't get what they wanted.
Right.
That can skew it.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And the key thing is, what you really want to do at this point is you have a core. And when we think about engagement is, are you engaging your core of people, your members? Are they your marketing department? That's kind of a way to think about it. So I would say that is the biggest win when you think about using this consistently is your level of engagement with the current membership so great that they're your marketing department and they're pulling people in. They're actually bringing, our church does that. People invite people to church. That's great, you know? And you want to know why it is. So, you know, we look for keywords like friendly and great sermons and great music and community. Like the word community keeps popping up all the time. And, welcoming, word comes up all the time. Biblical, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, good, this is what we're trying to invest in. So anyway, that book, 14 Fridays, has a lot of stuff about Net Promoter, and again, I'd recommend SurveyMonkey. Inbound awareness then, as people are searching for you, right, your website is your front door. And just to alleviate the debate on the topic, your website is designed for guests and not for members. So that's no debate. Your members are not going to your website, or at least they shouldn't. It would if you're trying to attract people, you can't win at both. I'll just tell you that.
We actually had the opposite for a while.
Yeah.
And we completely revamped
Yeah.
the website so that there is a small little part over here where members go to find the stuff that they're interested in and their department, their place where they serve or
Right.
whatever it is, signing up for things like that. But the whole front of the page is all about people who are seeing it for the first time, and it made a big difference
Yep.
in the engagement on the website.
Yep.
It was a huge difference because you're now saying, we're talking to you
Right.
who've never been here before.
Exactly. Yep. One thing to think about is if a lot of churches are doing this now, plan your visit, where they can actually fill out a form to let the church know that I'm planning to come. So think about this. If they tell you in advance that they're coming, what would you do different for them? It's a great thinking exercise, right? Would you reserve a parking spot for them? Would you give them a host? Would you give them a gift? So there's all kinds of things that you could do to make them feel very welcomed. So that's a very special thing if they actually fill out a form like that. Think very hard about that. Then the other part then is search engine optimization, and unless you've got a very savvy tech team, then my recommendation is to outsource that. Find a good consultant. I do recommend Missional Marketing down in the Courtyard. They're really good for that. They've actually helped us with some of the stuff that we work on. And again, Google My Business, free Google search ads. There's directories, and make sure that your site is listed properly in directories so that people, when they're searching for churches, that you're one of the churches that will show up in their search. Outbound, again, this is your digital, your physical billboards. Facebook is huge. A lot of people say Facebook is outdated. Facebook is the biggest social media platform on the planet, and it'll stay that way for a long time. It doesn't mean that the 18-year-old's on there, but it's still the biggest. And especially families with, moms and grandmas are on there, So Facebook events and Facebook ads are huge when you're trying to promote events. You should have an intentional marketing budget that makes sense for the size of your ministry. And then getting into creative content. We have a studio. We have a creative team, and then we actually have a ministry that we're spinning into a semi-autonomous ministry called Red Braille, which does video production. We're partnering with other ministries to do their video production, so they produce stuff for us in other ministries. So there's a lot of value in that content, and that's stuff that you push out and you're giving to people for free. You're giving them free content. And so by doing that, that's kind of helping to bolster the attract relationship that you have with people, right? It makes them say, I want to know more. That's the key thought process, right? So raving fans causes people to want to know more, right? Creative content causes people to want to know more. And being very easy to access in searching causes people to want to know more. And again, felt needs will come up. So let's talk about felt needs. This is what Barna research has surfaced nationwide. Now, it may look different in your community, and it's worth thinking about, is your community different than this? But nationwide. So marriage, these are the felt needs that people are thinking about. They're searching about this on Google, right? Marriage. I'm going to unplug that thing. I don't know.
I don't think it's the phone.
Okay.
There's got to be a walkie-talkie.
It's so strange. It's like the operator or something. We just unplug it, maybe. So marriage, parenting, mental health is a relatively new thing that's emerged. Does that surprise anybody? No. But there's not a ton of churches that are equipped to help people with mental health right now. That's kind of a new type of ministry that's emerging. Leadership and vocation, what is my purpose? What am I called to do? And then personal finance. And that'll depend a lot depending on the demographics that you're in. There's a prediction that's going to be a major recession coming in the next 12 months or so. So do you have an FPU program or something comparable to that? So these are all like things that people are searching about. So if somebody says on Google, how do I fix my marriage? How can you show up in that search? Right? Think about that. That's an inbound strategy. So we do consultation and we do cohorts and training, and we run people through very in-depth teaching on these topics, and we have them build plans around what it looks like to have an attract strategy for the local church. And this is a sample of what that kind of worksheet looks like in a team. Here's some resources. We are sharing this, if you want, at the end. There's a link to download these slides. But here's a whole bunch of good books that you could dig into. The first one is 14 Fridays. Start with Why is a great book to think about your compelling why statement. Culture Built My Brand. This is an organization, historic agency. They talk about how culture is kind of the thing that's driving what people say about you. Culture is for an organization what personality is to a person, right? Rethink Communication. This is a great sort of technical handbook about how to really get focused communication to people and really think about crafting messages to get them to take next steps. And then the Connected Church is all about social media strategies. And of course, you can always outsource as well. All right, anything about Attract before I move to Get? Doing well here? Okay. Get, the motivation is I want to try. So instead of I want to learn more, is I want to try it out. So a simple definition of Get is creating a recordable first-time interaction with somebody. You fail to get their personal information. If you fail to get it, then you're still functioning in the realm of Attract, right? So, big Harvest Fest. Go ahead.
What you just pointed out is we just talked about this last night, that we have the old traditional sign in, where people sign in if they're at the service or whatever. And there's a little check mark that says, I'm a first time, or I'm a visitor, and they say interested in membership, and all you have is an illegible signature.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I said,
you didn't get them.
We can't do that anymore.
You didn't get them.
Figure out a way to get these people to tell us, okay, you're interested? Well, here, help
yes.
us help you.
Help us help you. Exactly. Okay. Perfect. So, example, big Harvest Fest. Like, anybody do Harvest Fest or something similar to that, like in your church? We do a big one. We'll get between 1,000 and 2,000 people showing up. If we don't get their info, we did not get them, right? We are still attracting them. So that experience, all that work that we did to bring them onto our campus, we didn't get them. We attracted them. We made them think more positively about us and maybe want to learn more about us. But we didn't capture anything about them that lets us follow up with them. So if you don't have that built into your strategy, then you're succeeding at Attract and you're not succeeding at moving them along into the Get, right? That's a key thing. Data capture is key to this. It is the beginning of a two-way relationship instead of a one-way relationship. Data capture, the right data capture system depends on the environment you're meeting people in. So what might be, it's this very open event that you're letting people into, a Harvest Fest. How would you capture their data? A drawing, right? Maybe an entrance fee that is electronic, right? Scan this to pay a $2 fee, right? So I'm a fan of charging a nominal amount just to get their contact info. Does that make sense? not because forget the budget, get their info. It's 2,000, whatever it is, that's a marketing budget, right? So registrations, ticketing, electronic payments, QR codes, all kinds of ways to try and make that seamless. A lot of times people will come to a worship service, they won't fill out a Connect card, but they may make a gift. So you got their info through their gift. Often overlooked is nursery. Why is it important to sign your kids into the nursery? You get their info. It's a safety issue, but it's also getting their info. So there's a lot of different pathways other than the traditional Connect card to get people's information. There's environments that are designed to get people. Obviously, worship is an environment for doing that. And throughout the year, you should have worship services that are very guest-friendly oriented things. A Mother's Day service. Moms want their kids to take them to worship on Mother's Day. They dress up really nice, right? We did a thing where we promoted it and gave out gift cards for moms and really hammed it up. We have a really attractional Veterans Day service. We go crazy on our Veterans Day service and make it super over-the-top patriotic, right? We don't do that every service, but there's opportunities that make it invitational for people that are not necessarily insiders. Community events, a good rule of thumb, I know this seems crazy, but about 9 per year. Community events, and what makes a good community event is that it's a good event for your members to invite non-members to. It's very easy to invite friends to, like we did something called Hallapalooza. It's like there's a Santa Claus there and a sleigh and campfires, and it's not really worship service per se. It's just very friendly gathering. Very easy to invite your friends to it, right? Sometimes a little harder to invite your friends to worship if that's not where they're at right now, right? So that's the key thing. It's very invitational. Help your raving fans bring people in. Care ministries, this is often overlooked. So we just talked about felt needs, marriage, parenting, vocation, mental health. So do you have care ministries that exist on your campus to address those needs, right? This may be, a lot of times that would be the first time a person would set foot on a church. They don't want your invitation, that person doesn't want your invitation to Sunday worship, but they are desperate for somebody to help them with their marriage. And guess what? When you help them with their marriage, now you have a different relationship with them, right? Anchor businesses, schools, coffee shops, gym. I've heard co-working spaces, we've looked at that. So these are all things that get people in. They're maybe not necessarily tied to worship, but they create first-time interactions with people. So this is if you were to do like a workshop with us, we'd be working through a template like this. Any questions on getting people before we... Here's some resources, some books. Becoming a Welcoming Church. I'm a really big fan of Tom Rainier. He's an author of Simple Church, but he's done a lot of things about hospitality and welcoming people. This is a good one by Eric Swanson and Rick Rissa, Externally Focused Quest. So really, like, how does the church put on the eyes of the outsider, right? All right, moving on to retention. The motivation of the person that you're dealing with in the retention phase is, I want to stay or I want to get more connected, right? So I've tried it, I like it, I want to stay, I want to get more connected. Now I've got to interact with that person. A church succeeds at retain when they convert first-time interactions into recurring interactions. So they're engaging with them along that process. So a good rule of thumb is the 3 times rule. A person who comes to worship 3 times is extremely likely to become a recurring regular worshiper. A person who gives 3 times is extremely likely to become a recurring giver. So a lot of people think that the most important interaction is the first interaction. It's actually, it is an important one, but it actually gets more important as you go from the second into the third. I like to say, again, just categorizing things, that there's 4 key systems, retention systems in the church. And a system is what? Do 2 or more times, right? So you've got to retain new worshipers. You've got to retain new givers. If somebody comes to a community event, you've got to think about what is a good next step for them. Don't just let them disappear and not follow up with them. And then the same thing with a care ministry. And you may need to change the invitation based, it may be very dependent on the type of interaction for the first time. So you need to have tracking systems. You have to have a good database that says this person came here for the first time, and it has to flag it and has to go into somebody's queue, right? The next step may not be the same type of interaction. If somebody comes to Harvest Fest, they may be interested in your Christmas service, or they may be even more interested in the date night that you're hosting. Because they've probably got kids if they're coming to Harvest Fest, right? They're probably a family. Or maybe a parenting class. So you have to think about that. It may not just be this one thing, just assume it's worship, right? There may be other things that are more attractional to keep them in a recurring relationship. So an example, a major event might be a type of care ministry or a serving opportunity. And the key thing, though, is when you design the event, the attractional event, think about the next step as designing the event. What is the right next step for the people that we're inviting into this event? Build it up front so that you're not just scrambling after the fact to think about it. Build it into the planning. On-ramps. So we're talking more about felt needs. Leaders that run these types of programs, they build relational equity. So like I said, the model of I don't want an invitation to come to church, but my marriage is a mess. So you go to a marriage workshop and your marriage improves. Now, if that person who helped you invites you to church, would you treat that invitation differently? Yes. Not a guarantee. But do we then, if we know that, do we actually train the people that run that program to make those invitations? Do we actually think of them as an intentional on-ramp into further discipleship? Is the person who's running the FPU program aware of the worship and giving and small group behavior of the person, their connection to any type of ministry at all, or are they just focused on this one thing and not thinking about what's next for them? So what we'd say is, if you've got a cares ministry, really think about that ministry as an on-ramp to whatever's next for them, okay? And just have that as part of the training. Think of them as the on-ramp team. We're on-ramping people into discipleship through the felt need that you're addressing. And again, this is a way that we recommend modeling it out. This is kind of a worksheet that we give people. You can actually start to bullet point things and what are we doing well and not well. Here's some recommended books about retention. I'm a big fan of the Boomerang one. But these are all kind of well-known books. So again, you'll have access to that if you download our slides. Now grow. This is the same thing as disciple. Motivation is I want to grow. I want to become better at something, right? So churches succeed and grow when people deepen their faith and are properly equipped to succeed in everyday life, which is their vocation, right? And we believe that, ministry can impact every type of vocation that a person has, right? There's every opportunity to reflect the love of Jesus, no matter what vocation a person is doing. So we believe that the best practices for growth, every church should have some type of a new member class. It's good to give them a basics of the faith type of experience to onboard them into what it means to be a Christian. Definitely recommend that. Membership is becoming less and less of a thing for people, but it's still a thing for some people. And I think there's a lot of people that expect to have that be provided for them if that's what they want, right? I recommend it. New members, regular worshipers should be invited into a simple discipleship process, right? That is easy to articulate. Is it easy to articulate the discipleship process at your church? Raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, that's an issue, right? It's got to be easy to eat, very easy, simple taglines. So for us, it's, going back here, worship, small group, serving, right? People also, in that process, they're expecting to grow, not just in faith, but in other things. That's what they're expecting the church to address in discipleship. So this is a collaborative research done with Barna and Harvard University. The areas that people want to grow, they call it the 5 key flourishings, human flourishing: health, faith, financial, vocation, and relationship. And I know there's a bit of an eye chart here, but yeah, this would be something that you could actually survey on. And you could say, if small groups is one of your core discipleship programs that you're inviting everybody into, maybe you survey people and you say, this is what people in small group look like on these dynamics, and this is what people not in it are looking like. And if you can see that the programs are making an impact, that becomes a value proposition for people to invite them in. If you don't see there's an impact, that becomes an opportunity to say maybe there's content and something that needs to be adjusted in the program, right? Great resource. I'm a big fan of Simple Church. We used to be like all about Simple Church and nothing else, and then it really grew into what this became the church engagement model, because we realized Simple Church was too simple, and there's a lot that happened before and a lot that happened after, and even the author acknowledged that. So I recommend Simple Church as a part of the church engagement model, but not as he kind of describes it as the entire thing. I don't believe it is. He wrote another book, kind of a follow-up of Simple Church in the post-COVID world. And then another great tool, if you're interested in those human flourishing dynamics, is to partner with Glue. They've got a survey called the Church Pulse Survey. Barna and Glue. All right, getting into Multiply here. How we doing? Multiply, I want to contribute. So you've seen the movement now. Very consumeristic to very, contribution-oriented. A church succeeds in Multiply when they effectively raise up new ministry leaders who are able to lead others in discipleship. This is kind of the core passion of the ULC. We believe very strongly that the gospel grows in environments where people are being raised up into leadership, into ministry leadership roles. So the local church should be world-class experts at raising up people into leadership internally. They should be the best, bar none. And sometimes they are, but a lot of times they're not the best, because the king, the Missio Dei demands the best, right? So this is the passion behind it. So what we do is we've curated a lot of content. I'm not going to give you all 10 of these because there's too much to go over in this time. But we've got 10 leadership practices that we've curated from Leadership Network. We've also worked with some other well-known authors on this topic, Mac Lake, for example, to kind of say this is what excellence in internal leadership development looks like. I'll give you a few samples. So one of the top 10 practices is called IC&U. So your entire staff should be excellent at having IC&U conversations. IC&U, the ability to really care and love for people when they show up on campus. Would you be willing to join our hospitality team? Right? I noticed, that you are a really excellent problem solver. We have somebody in our tech team really needs somebody who can troubleshoot. So it's about acknowledging the person's gift first and then connecting them into serving. It's much, much, much more effective when ministry leaders are having IC&U conversations than it is for somebody up in the pulpit to say, I need 10 people to be ushers. It's really different. It's a personalized invitation. Raising from within, a best practice for churches that excel in leadership development is that 85% of the staff are internal hires. 85%. How do we normally fill vacancies?
Steal from other churches.
Steal from other, thank you, Tim. We steal from other churches. If our primary way of getting people into leadership is to steal from other churches, is that multiplication? No, it's redistribution, right? Multiplication is when new leaders are raised up. So a discipline, 85% of new hires are raised from within. It's a countercultural to our denomination to do that. This is probably the hardest part right here, is this culture shift. And then kind of practically speaking is a defined leadership pathway. If you go to Christ Greenfield, you will see this in every building. You'll see this poster. This is to give people a visual of what it looks like that they could be if they begin, a leadership pathway, servant leadership pathway. Every person could, if they desire, go on a pathway to become a team member, a leader, a coach, a director, all the way up to the executive team of the church. That pathway is accessible to them. And we've got curriculum, we've got a process, we've got an onboarding system to help people all along that way. And usually right around here, between the coach and the director, is the transition from volunteer to paid. Maybe part-time, maybe full-time.
Hey, Jack.
Yep.
How much do you guys celebrate people in that process at your church on Sunday morning?
That's pretty good. I mean, we talk about people know our passion is leadership, but I'm going to let Tim talk about that. What's your experience
Well,
in terms of celebration?
So many different people who are leading in a variety of different ways on Sunday that value is just kind of lived out.
It's behaved.
And there are seasons where, you're recognizing a number of your serve team members. Since I'm here, so
Yeah.
I'm part of the ULC too. Sorry, I was just over in our La Mesa presentation, Family and Ministries. But I think the whole thing to get around with the church engagement model is you will never be done refining.
Yeah.
Like, to get your head around, we're going to lock in. And the reason that cues, could we do better at celebrating at certain seasons? Absolutely. So that's a key next step. But what I'm always reminded of as we enter into every single accelerator once a year in partnership with other churches, there's always going to be more people that need Jesus. Our team is never perfectly healthy, and there are always new things to learn to go to the next level. So remember, I don't know what movie it's from, but thank you, sir. May I have another? Every time you enter into this, we have our governance consultant is here, and man, is that a hard thing? Applying this into very strict governance that allows us to go fast, but man, you better be building a lot of accountability and trust measures with our board. So yeah, it's just a build, measure, learn process even for us. And I guess if we're going on the journey, that's why we just invite, this is what the whole thing is. It's a level playing field. We just invite other churches to go on the journey to become better as well.
How many vicars do we have right now?
A lot. So we basically have a pre-seminary to seminary program that we're working on in partnership with a group called Kairos University and the Luther House of Studies, not recognized by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod yet. Having a lot of conversations, all bivocational leaders. The average profile of the student is truly Jack and Tanya, who is also on our team. Bivocational leaders being raised up, and where we think about them being raised up is around the coach to director level, into various levels of the ministry. It could be operations, or it could be a future bivocational vicar could become recognized later on as a pastor. So that's a whole nother conversation. If you wanted to have that conversation, we do that a lot.
So a real world case study is the vision of Christ Greenfield. We're not speaking on behalf of Christ Greenfield, but we're both connected there. So 20 campuses in 20 years. And to do that, you've got to raise leaders like crazy to be able to do that, because we're not hiring external to do this. So we're at 2 campuses, and we're expecting to be at 3, probably informally within a week or so, formally within probably 6 to 9 months because of a merger. And it's because we've been able to raise up staff to support that ministry, and because they've been so delighted with the staffing we've been able to provide, they're like, yeah, let's do it, let's merge, and let's do this.
So I am not super pleased with all of, and I've let the appropriate people know, with all of the offerings all the way up to ordination right now. And so we're walking through a process to discover a way that pastors can be raised up local. And I'll just share more of what it is. So it's in partnership with the Luther House of Studies. You can go to uniteleadership.org, and you build a mentor team. It's fully accredited, and it's $300 a month. The economics and the scale of it are next level. So it's 20% the actual cost of anything that's existing right now. And for us, it really is about lower income leaders being raised up, indigenous cross-cultural leaders being raised up to go into inner city communities. And it's a lot of fun. Theology is rich.
Confessional.
super confessional and very, very practical. What does it mean to be a Word and Sacrament minister right here in this space? And I think we're walking through a season of the church. If the church is going to be restored to health, right, in a post-Christian era, we really need to take more responsibility for raising up hyper-local leaders who are bivocational. We're not talking nearly enough about bivocational leaders within the church right now. So we're running a pilot project right now. If you wanted more information, it's on our website. We set up. I have 3 or 4 conversations with pastors every single week, getting more under the hood of what that program is.
So our ultimate prayer and hope is in partnership with the Synod that these vicars that are being raised up would in time be recognized, perhaps through a process of colloquy, interview them for suitability, and then if they're suitable, then colloquize them so they can be recognized.
Yeah, it may just be me, but I don't hear from a lot of leaders, especially synodical leaders, ways that I hear a plea without a plan. That's what I hear. Now you just send them all here. Like, if we're an aging, our demographics are crazy. We're an aging church body. They're just not there. And yes, we should send our young people off to our institutions. 100%, I'm a product of it. But I think to bridge the gap, we're going to need to look at those in the 35 to 55 age range who are within our communities that want to be trained sent.
Talk about the cost. Did you talk about
it's $300 a month. It's a Netflix of higher education, fully accredited. Fully accredited. That's the way they talk about it. Fully accredited. So Kairos, have you ever heard Kairos? It's more of a platform, and then a number of different denominations are partnering with
putting their own curriculum on top of it.
Curriculum. It's a robust curriculum map,
Yep.
but it's outcome-driven, competency-based, rather than credit-based. So the students, they go at their own pace. The MDiv takes 3 to 4 years. You can get an MA, takes 2 to 3 years or so.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you asked about vicars. I think there are 8.
Yeah.
Right now.
8 vicars.
Process. So.
All right. For people that want to know more about it, 2 books I can recommend. Strongly recommend. So the first book is called Empowering Leadership by a guy we know, really great guy named Michael Fletcher. A little bit about Michael Fletcher's story is that he was a senior pastor at a church called Manna Church that was outside, I think, Fort Bragg. And he had taken over and he had to build up a leadership team. But his problem is all his people were in the military. And does anybody know what life in the military is like?
Yeah.
You move after about 2 years, 1.5 to 2.5 years, you're sent somewhere else. So he's losing all his leaders probably about every 18 months. He's got to completely turn over his leadership. So he had to, as a matter of practicality and survival, figure out how to rapidly get people into leadership roles. So it's a great book as a starting point. And then another one I really recommend is a book called The Multiplication Effect by one of our friends, Mac Lake. Just like world-class guru. He talks about leadership pipeline. So it's taking some of these corporate principles and building that, serving, leading, coaching, directing pipeline, but in the church context. And he actually has some companion books that we use for onboarding people, leading others, coaching others, leading a department. So content to even help people as they're moving in greater roles of responsibility. And I am going to plug ULC a little bit real quick. So the passion of the Unite Leadership Collective is we just care about raising up leaders, and we believe, again, that the church should be world-class at it. So we help partner with other ministries. We'll do one-on-one coaching with them. We also invite people into cohorts. And sometimes, depending on what the church needs are, we run a cohort that's all about attract, get, retain. And it's all focusing on branding and marketing and going way more deep than we have here. And then we have another cohort that's all about disciple, multiply. And that's where we get into like the hardcore raising up leaders, having some sort of a big why that you're raising up leaders for, sending people out, starting new things. And that's like a year-long experience where you get in-person kind of team experiences 3 times in a year and build like a year-long plan. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, and this may be a conversation for another time.
Mm-hmm.
Throw it out there. So that I think a lot of our churches are trying to figure out. We've got people that were engaging online.
Yep.
What's that engagement process looks like to go from just a passive observer coming in. Have you guys thoughts of how this applies to that kind of?
Our personal reality right now is that people online are mostly in the realm of attract and not get. We don't know, they haven't self-identified who they are when they're joining us online. So they could be members, they could be new people, we don't know. And so really when we think about our online strategy, it's become more of an attract strategy. And it's even shaped how we think about producing the online worship experience. We used to produce an online church where it looked like you were in a studio and stuff, and we're live streaming because really what we want to do is attract people into that space, and we want people to long for that experience, and we want them to say, I want to know more, I want to try that out. So that's kind of more how we think about the online. But at the same time, we're also pushing out really good content that we want people to engage with. So,
Anything out there?
have you figured it out? Yeah.
That's the conversations we're having. I think there's some that's always our hope and prayer, but there's some that just seem to be this perpetual online, and it's now how do we begin to move them along?
Yeah.
I think the best thing we're testing right now is using the app in partnership with Studio C.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about.
I didn't talk about that. Let's bring it up.
So, you develop your own personalized pathway, and then along really the attract, retain, disciple, multiply, it's given them just the one next step. Go to starting point. And a lot of our experiences are flipped, right? So you can take in this content, have a conversation. I think this is our best effort to, if you're there, we've got a micro church strategy that we'd love to engage you with, or a small group strategy in your respective context.
Yeah.
So the app, well over 3,000 downloads, but I mean, there's a lot of confidentiality as it relates to those who are engaging on that app. But I think the next steps, getting people to self-identify, is our best case.
The Studio C is the vendor that they use, and they created like a middleware. So the middleware exists between our database, which is Church Community Builder, but they use different platforms, and then our app, which is Subsplash, but they use different platforms. So when you go into our app, there's a dashboard. You click on the dashboard, and it identifies the person with a text code. And so now it knows who's on that app. And because it knows the stuff from the database, it knows always like the messaging that the person should get for next steps. So if they've not been baptized, they're always getting content about how important and great and wonderful it is for a person to get baptized. And a guy may get a different message than what a woman would get on that. And it's very easy to click the button to sign up and take the next step. And that goes all the way through the engagement model, into leadership.
And we're right in the middle of like really fattening that out right now. We've just been with them for a little less than a year.
Yeah.
So,
but it's a pretty cool technology. The way to think about it is the messaging is permanent, but the audience changes as people progress, right? So.
I mean, I trend with what you're saying, because we got a massive amount of people who just seem to be online.
Yeah.
We had dinner last night with 20 people who live out here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Nebraska.
Yep.
And that's their church home. So we're kind of in a different spot where it's not get them in the door and then engage them in this certain strategy. They're there. How do I engage them there?
I think it's going to be both and. For sure.
And we haven't cracked that egg yet.
Yeah.
So this is, our attempt in terms of engaging with the app. That's our best
that's where we are
test right now.
On Saturday, we're going to be talking about microsite mergers and multi-sites, and we'll talk a little bit something about platform theory. How does the church provide a platform? And one of the key things about the platform is it allows people to connect. So a really good platform does that. That's something that we have to try and bake more intentionally into our app, right? But you think about like Uber allows the driver to connect with a rider, right? So how could your technology allow people to form groups in Arizona even though you're out in Nebraska, right? And so you have to build a platform to do that. It's a technology solution and a communication solution, right?
When you talk about mergers,
So the case study we're working in right now is a small independent Lutheran church out in Queen Valley. They heard about the work that we've been doing, the ULC, and kind of they had a positive experience with Christ Greenfield. They wanted to know if there was a way to partner. We partnered by sending over one of our vicars to preach for like an honorarium. They pay an honorarium. He goes out there, he preaches. Now they've got a steady person pastoring them, and they've been loving it. right? So we've just been sharing kind of all of our vision, our systems, and our culture and our language with them, and just met with their leadership team a few weeks ago, and they said, we want to be Christ Greenfield. Like you guys, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, you know? So they're announcing that this weekend, that they're going to start changing the name, adopting the name Christ Greenfield, and then we're going to go, we talk about a process of dating, engaged, married, right? So we're moving into the engagement process right now. We're not fully married. There'll still be a separate entity for a while. They got some systems to implement before we're married, right?
So we're talking about that Saturday morning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smaller churches that I think our districts are going to want, if you're at a healthier church, want you at the table.
We're trying to do that right now. So.
Time and trust, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's all about Sunday morning. We can't find pastors.
Yeah.
That's our killing.
Yeah, we're sending 2 vicars out there right now on rotation. One primary and one like kind of once a month. Yeah.
Sub-zero temperatures. Will they come out?
Why don't we, let's talk.
We actually, I'm at Emmanuel Lutheran in Cedar Falls, and there's a small church out in Rhinebeck. We are intentionally keeping the churches separate, but instead of, they could afford to hire on somebody for 2/3, but they needed help with the other part. So that person serves over at our church for 1/3 as a pastor. We are now adding another person and doing the exact opposite. Oh, okay, now we need 2/3, 1/3. So essentially we are maintaining the churches by way of growing that by helping each other out in that way. So what you're doing is in a very simple way, kind of it's maintaining the smaller churches by giving them the resources of our larger church to help them to develop these same strategies, right?
And it's not, and it's not just staffing, it's the branding, it's the systems, it's the culture, in time.
They want it.
Right.
Yeah, praise God. Hey, you guys are excellent. Yes. I know it's hot in here.
Question was, you had the staffing piece, and it was all staffing. Is there a model, or if you tried that model, maybe modified a bit and translated it into the volunteers?
It does reach into the volunteers because it begins at serving. So it's serving, leading, coaching, directing.
We don't use volunteer too much. It's not in the Bible, but if you use it, it's fine. Just a serve team member.
Well, we don't have paid staff. We're a very small church.
Yeah, right.
I'm thinking of trying to, do a model where you take the person coming in, you engage them, you ask them, as you described it, and then get them to point Z.
Yeah, it's not always the case based on the budget of the church that the person who's the director is paid. They might be paid nominally. They might get a stipend or something like that. But we just generally say that if your church is healthy enough to have, leaders, coaches, and directors, that's usually the transition point from volunteer to paid. Yeah. And we try to set that as a hard definition. So, if you're hiring somebody who's just supervising a team, we don't call that person a director, right? Because that would confuse the label. A director is supervising coaches who supervise team leaders, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we have an accelerator starting here in the Valley in August. If you're interested in coming, we like 4 to 5 churches or so. We always are going through it, even as our church. So it'd be fun to learn with you. If you want more information, we'll give you some more on the way out. It looks like you guys got some. Any other questions? We're about at time, and it is warm in here. Can I pray for us? Lord Jesus, thank you for being Lord of the church, and we have nothing apart from you, and yet, because your Spirit lives within us, we've been attracted to you. We've been engaged, retained by you. We are your disciples, Lord Jesus, now multiplied out to the masses, carrying your light and your love. That, at the end of the day, what it's all about. It's not about any kind of fancy, secular whatever. It's just trying to, in the midst of an increasingly secular post-Christian day and age, be faithful to the calling that you have given us to give word and sacrament out. So go with us the rest of this day. May we take even just one thing from a number of these sessions and bring it back and faithfully apply it in our unique context. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys.